In this video, we're going to look at how to pass the KPMG interview and get you a job with KPMG. And we're going to look at how you're going to show the global behaviors and answer the most common questions to be really successful with KPMG interviews. Let's start with a question that is very likely to come up and comes up all the time in interviews, but is often answered very poorly. And that is simply, what are your strengths and weaknesses? And there is a simple procedure that you can follow that scores very well on this question. So when you're looking at the strengths first, you're going to start by picking something that is a genuine strength. You have to make sure that the strength you present to KPMG is a strength that you definitely have, because if you don't really have that strength backed up, when they ask follow-up questions, you're not going to be very successful on those. The next thing you need to do is you need to have your strength be well evidenced. These people are interviewing people all day, so they are going to hear loads of different strengths, but your one is going to stand out because you're going to back it up with some evidence. But most importantly, your strength has to be something that is highly relevant to the business that you're applying to, because they want to employ people who have strengths in the areas that they need. So here's an example of a possible idea. So one of my strengths is that I'm an extremely well organized person. So when you're working at KPMG, you're going to have lots of different demands, lots of different things happening at once. So being organized is a really good thing to have as a strength. And the most important part of this answer that makes it such a strong answer is that it's got some strong evidence. So if you refer to the reference from the manager at my placement who said that, and then you can quote something that backs it up. You may want to bring in some certificate, for example, if you've done some extra training that evidences that somebody else in the world agrees with you that this is definitely one of your strengths. So if you bring some evidence, your answer is going to stand out as way better than what they've seen from a lot of other candidates. So let's move on and look at the weakness, which is often very, very badly answered. So there is a three-step procedure, like with the strength, that is very successful on this. So you're going to start by giving them something that is a real weakness. They don't want to hear rubbish. For example, people might say something like, I'm too much of a perfectionist, and pretend that that is somehow some massive weakness when it's really an element of bragging with an element of a sort of weakness. So it's a terrible answer, and it shows that you're not very reflective and you've not really thought about your priorities for development. So don't go down that route. Say something that is actually a genuine weakness and could be a small barrier. Then you're going to talk about how you're proactively addressing it. Having a weakness is not a good thing. We all have weaknesses, but you want to actually be trying to do something about it, and you want to involve KPMG in that process. So look at the training. For example, KPMG provides lots of training on soft skills. So if one of these things is a weakness that is a soft skill, you can talk about the training that KPMG provides on developing soft skills. But the most important thing on this question, and the reason that people can do so badly on it, is that the weakness that you pick must not be particularly important for the job. For example, if you're applying to be an auditor or training as an accountant and you're saying something like, I've always hated maths and never really got it. So basically, you're saying to them, I'm going to be terrible at the job that I'm applying for, and well, you're just not going to get it. So you want something that is a real weakness, but honestly, if you were really bad at it, KPMG would probably employ you anyway because it wouldn't make much difference. And the way to structure your answer is to start with one of the weaknesses I am aware of is. So the aware of is very important. So you're emphasizing that I know all about this weakness and I've thought about it. And then the next thing you do is you go on and on about I've been working on this by, and then talk about what you're going to do at KPMG to overcome it. So spend much more time talking about what you're doing about your weakness rather than talking about the weakness, because you don't want to elaborate in great detail about how this weakness is such a massive problem and is going to make you terrible when you're working at KPMG. Focus on what you're doing, briefly mention the weakness. And if you follow this three-step procedure, you'll select an appropriate weakness that will not count against you, and you'll also be showing off that you're reflective and that you're constantly committed to developing and improving. And that's really what they want to see. And if you get that in there, you will be successful on this question. The next question that is often asked is some variation on the problematic team question. So they're basically asking you to envisage some sort of scenario. Perhaps someone in the team isn't pulling their weight, or someone drops out of the team, or there's some problem that happens when working in a team, and they want to see that you can deal with this appropriately. And this question, again, is often done badly because it can descend into attacking team members and a disastrous failed project, which is the wrong way to do it. So I'm going to show you how to carefully select a project and show all of the behaviors that they want to hear. So a successful answer has got some sort of genuine conflict, that there was a real problem in the team. If you say, like, I've never worked in a team that's not worked well, that suggests to them that you don't have enough real world experience to be able to work in KPMG effectively. You've got to show that you've got some experience. The issue in the team has to have been managed professionally. So you have to be proud of what you've done, and you have to think, if you did this while working at KPMG, everyone would be happy with it. Because if you start talking about handling the situation in a way that KPMG disagrees with, that person's not going to offer you the job. But most importantly, do not pick an example where the project was not successful. There must be a positive outcome. So on the other hand, a bad answer might have a disastrous conflict where people, fell out spectacularly and the whole project was a massive disaster. Anything that is vaguely unprofessional, and be really strict on this. If there's anything that you think that they might question or have any issue whatsoever, choose another example or don't bring that up. And the worst thing you can do is pick a project with a negative outcome. So this is kind of how you go about picking it, but then answering it, you have to do it in a very specific way to take them through the story in a logical way and show the behaviors that they need. So the structure of your answer is what we call the STAR technique, STAR being the first letter of each of these. So you get situation, task, action, result. And this is the way that you're going to structure your answer. But then I'm going to show you what sort of behaviors you need to show off and what they're looking for on the scoring. So the situation is just, what problem did you encounter? This could be someone was very behind on their deadlines, not meeting the interim deadlines. It could be that someone dropped out because of illness. It could be that some people in the group didn't get on very well. It could be a number of things. So you explain what the problem was and just be very clear. This is exactly what went wrong initially. And then once you've explained the situation, go on and explain the task. So what were you actually supposed to achieve? What did success look like? What was the point of the project? Then circle back to the situation and explain what specific actions you did. So did you move some deadlines and redistribute some things? Did you go and meet with the person that was causing some of the issues and come up with an action plan? What did you actually do? And then the most important thing is, when you talk about the result, explain how the goal was actually achieved. Do not use an example where the goal was not achieved, because they don't want to employ people that don't meet the end point. KPMG wants people that are given a project and all sorts of things happen during the project, but when it comes to hand it in, it's all perfect and done on time, on budget, perfectly. That's what they want. They don't want to employ people that don't get the right results. So you must make sure that your example has the right result. And the behaviors they want is, they want to see someone that is solution focused, that is going, here's a problem, I'm going to think about the solution. What do I do? How do I get to there? What are all the issues and what are their corresponding solutions? So don't talk at length about the problem, mention it very briefly, just one sentence about the problem, and then go on and on and on about all of the solutions and what you did. Make sure that you get across high standards, that you expect in a team that everyone pulls together and everyone contributes, and that the success is based on everyone working together. And when you're in industry, everyone's expected to do their best. You want to show that you're supportive, to try and get in there something about where you actually helped someone out, or that you are sensitive to the reasons why they were somewhat behind, and that you put in appropriate support for that. You want to show that you get the best out of people. The number one thing that they are looking for is a successful endpoint. So whenever you're planning answers to any question, or you're in the interview answering the question, you should always be 100% focused on, what does KPMG need as a business? What sort of people do they need? And ultimately, they need people that get jobs done to standard, on time and on budget. And so you want to be showing those sort of behaviors. So any question about teams, you should have a great method to answer it. So we can move on to a very common question, and literally any big four accounting firm tends to ask, why insert accounting firm here. And so in this case for KPMG, you want to be focusing on what is actually special about KPMG. And you can only do that with extensive research, and you have to tailor that to yourself. What for you is special about KPMG? So some pointers you might want to look out for is look up their corporate social responsibility. There's a CSR report you can read. So look at the things that they do as a corporate social responsibility and link that to your personal interests and part of your motivation. KPMG is very big on volunteering, so look at some of the volunteering work and talk about how you love to be involved in that. They have a big culture around leading by example and talk about why you think that's a great thing to do. And then you can look at the employer rankings and you can talk about how they are considered to be one of the best places to work, one of the best big employers to work for. And you can read up on the reasons why they achieved that ranking. What did those independent ranking companies like the Times, why did they put them so high? What things about KPMG resulted in them scoring very highly? And that changes every year those lists are compiled. A great way to show off your research here is to actually link it to a specific project. So find a KPMG client or a case study that KPMG was part of and just talk about why you would be really interested in working in that. Always link it to all your interests at every point and look at the training that you want to do. Do you want to, become chartered? And KPMG has the best route to that, for example. So link the qualifications and training to your motivation, because at entry level particularly, that is why people are joining KPMG, is to get that amazing training. But most importantly, throughout your answer, you have to show some enthusiasm. Actually be like, this is amazing. I really want to work here, because they want to employ people that want to work there, and they're not going to give the job to someone who's somewhat indifferent, like, yeah, KPMG, it's all right, it's just like all the other ones, what's the difference? They're not going to give that person the job. Things that you just don't mention, near my house, anything like, oh, it's the closest office to me, well, they don't care. They would much rather have someone that would relocate anywhere in the world, move to Antarctica to work for the company. Don't reference money at all, ever. Talk about, that you want to be a partner. That's, not really appropriate. Showing a lack of commitment, so talking about KPMG being a great starting point or anything like that, don't go down that route. And anything that you say that is not relevant to KPMG, they're just not really listening to. You have to make it relevant to the firm. So talking about wanting to move into some different industry in the future, or that's just the wrong thing. Do not ever mention leaving the company. That's the worst thing you can do. So if you get all of these elements and personalize it to yourself, I can't give you an answer to this. I can give you the things that you need to plan. And I'd recommend that you type YKPMG into YouTube, because there's really great videos, and I'll put a link in the description to one of people that work at KPMG answering this, and you can get some ideas and inspiration from them. Let's move on to question 4. What do you know about KPMG? If you don't do your research here, you are not going to be successful. So I've given you some starting points that you need to know about all of these things. You need to know what KPMG stands for. You need to know who the chairman is. You need to know their office locations. So if you're applying in the US, where are their US operations? If you're applying in the UK, you ought to know where all the different offices are. You ought to know their current breakdown of business. So how does assurance and M&A and advisory and technology consulting, what is the breakdown within the business? And that changes every year. What's its current turnover? You can research what they're doing at Innovation Labs, which is very interesting. And what makes KPMG unique? And you can link that to your answer in the previous question. My number one tip for this is to read KPMG's latest annual review. When you read that, there is absolutely amazing information in there, and it tells you everything you could ever possibly need to know. And if you've read that, just simply reading that cover to cover means that you've got loads of stuff to talk in the interview, and you're going to show off vastly superior knowledge. And if you look at the diagram, the worst answers are things that everyone knows. So if you say KPMG is a big 4 accounting firm, well, every single person applying to KPMG knows that, or they really should never have got an interview. And the best answers is where you get in some things that so few people know that the person interviewing you is actually learning from you. That is the people that score highest on knowledge is basically the people that are telling the interviewers things that they didn't even know about the firm. So stick to a couple of things that are completely unique that you wouldn't expect the person interviewing you to know. And if you drip those in, they're just going to immediately think this is someone that should score highly. So let's go on to the last question. At KPMG, you will have multiple conflicting tasks. How do you manage this? So, classic thing, when you're in industry, you're going to have lots and lots and lots of different things to do at once, and you've got to have some system for managing that. And it's a difficult question to answer, but there's four things that I think you should structure your answer around. So you can talk about a planning system. So you have short term, medium term, and long term goals. You might keep track of that in Excel. You might use Gantt charts. You have some system for tracking what I need to do now, what I'm going to be working on for the next few weeks, and what is the long term goal for the whole year or for a whole project. So you're going to have everything spread out like that. So you know what you need to be working on and you're keeping track of where you're progressing across all those different targets. You can talk about the idea of working smarter and not harder. So instead of just working and working and working and working, you're going to be working intelligently and you're going to be focusing on the right things at the right time. And you're going to be making best use of your time. There's lots of strategies. So if you type in working smarter, you'll find loads of ideas to run through. When you talk about prioritization, you can talk about prioritize by business impact. So what's going to have the most impact on the business? And lastly, just grit and determination, that sometimes you're just going to have to work late and you're happy to ramp up your workload so that you can get everything done. So that in those crunch times, you've got grit and determination to make sure that everything's a success. And if you mention all that, you will be successful on this question. So the last one as a bonus is KPMG actually tells you what they want to hear. They give you a list of what they are looking for in people they hire, and it's a fabulous way to plan. So you've got the global behaviors, and so there's a list of this is what they want. People who have all of these things to a high level are the people that they're going to give a job to. And I've given you a list on the other side of what I would recommend that you prepare. And so if you go into the interview with an example or something that matches up to every single global behavior, when you go through the interview, you'll just at every opportunity be using these and you'll be super well prepared. And if you're demonstrating all those global behaviors, they kind of have to score you very highly because that is their criteria. They have told you the criteria. So make advantage of this, screenshot this, pause it here, and when you're planning for your interview, focus on this slide. This is what you need to be successful. So hopefully this video has been very helpful to you. I wish you the best of luck in your KPMG interview. And finally, thank you very much for watching.